But then the more you know about the actual crime that happened, the more you understand that at a certain point, the facts ran out and no one really knows exactly what happened in the woods that night. And so then I just became a horror writer again, and I turned it into a Jersey Devil origin story. And so it pissed off a lot of people in the true crime community, but I
Mm.
was also able to attract listeners from other genres, from the horror genre, from paranormal genre. So we kind of caught lightning in a bottle, and the show opened #1 in the world, and it wound up the #5 show of 2021. And
Wow.
now all of a sudden I'm a podcaster, and I got to figure that out.
I mean,
So
you've made it onto our podcast, so you've really, really made it.
see, I've made it.
So,
That's
so
what I knew.
Yeah, yeah.
we're,
Mark's.
we're the Joe Rogan of. No, we're not.
No, we're not.
So I have a question. So you said pissed a lot of people off. Now, whenever you started doing it and you kind of ran out of, as you say, kind of the facts, so you kind
Yeah.
of spun it. Was the audience thinking this is just like a true crime podcast, and then all of a sudden there was a swerve in there where it's, you're just writing your own stuff? Was that just like, was that a shock to your audience initially,
Yes.
or?
Yeah, 100%. And that's one of the things I love about. I love a lot about podcasting. But one of the main things is that you get almost instant feedback in the comments, right? You don't have to wait months or years for something to get produced and then it gets out there. Blah, blah. You find out like right away. And so there was this cacophony of comments that were coming in, like people saying, "This isn't true crime. Who do you think you are? I feel duped." And then other people going, "Dude, just shut up. Google the murder, and you'll see what he's talking about. Like, kind of figure it out. Like, go for it." But the really funny thing was that I'm telling you, I just backed into it, just dumbass luck, like every step of the way, because the company commissioned me to make the show. They produced the whole thing, sight unseen. They recorded. They had a great composer, like everything, and they just gave me money and left me alone. So now we have this finished product. We have 10 episodes of a podcast, and the company I worked for, they happened to be represented by the same agency as this big podcast network called Wondery. Okay. So we got a pitch meeting with Wondery. And again, it just so happened that they had 3 different shows fall out of their schedule for that quarter. And so they were desperate for content. And so all they kept asking, like 3 times in the meeting, "So the show's completely done, like ready to go?" We're like, "Yeah, it's ready to go." And we got an offer the next day, and it was released 3 weeks later. So I don't even think they listened to it. Okay, because maybe if they had listened to it, they might have pumped the brakes a little bit and said, "Whoa, whoa, 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 we're trying to package this as a true crime show." So again, it was just my dumb ass just sitting there going, "Hey, I finished it. Here you go," right? Not knowing I was.
It's almost like a kind of like genius idea. Like you could just take Jack the Ripper or any like major unsolved crime and just go through all the facts, and then at the end, just throw it. He was actually a werewolf or something, whatever it might be. But
Dude, Mark. That's exactly what happened, but it was a little bit more involved with that. See, because what a lot of people don't know, and they found out a little bit afterwards, was that it was kind of like a therapy session for me. This whole thing, because the show is about a 14-year-old kid in my town in Jersey, my age at the time. Okay, kid grew up the same streets as me, under the same rules, the same pizzeria, the same fucking ice cream shop where we went as kid, like everything. Okay, and he did something that was incomprehensible to me. Right, he slaughters his mother, and then he commits suicide in the woods across the street after he lights his house on fire, trying to kill his dad and his little brother. Okay, the investigation afterwards, they found his body the next day, and he had a letter to the devil saying that, "I'm doing your bidding. I will fight goodness in any way that I can. I'm going to kill my whole family, kill myself, and reign with you in hell for eternity." Okay, and no one knew that this kid who was an altar boy, he was a straight A student, he was an all area 106-pound wrestler. Like, this kid was every parent's dream on the surface, and no one knew that he had been spiraling into this satanic abyss for 6 weeks, and it culminated with this brutal murder-suicide. Okay, and so this kid, that the press starts calling him the Jersey Devil, and it was like brutal, and my town just exploded with fear, and the Catholic Church swept in and said, "Oh, it was demonic possession. We missed it. Sorry, nothing to see here." Closed down the investigation, and it just bothered me for decades, And I'd written so many different versions of the story, just to try and purge it from myself emotionally. And so where I went in the last few podcast episodes was, I kind of cast this kid Tommy as an unwilling participant. He like meddled with something that he didn't understand how powerful it was, and he just got out over his skis. And then all of a sudden, oh my gosh, he invited this demon into himself, and he was actually trying to fight it though. Like he had a little bit of recognition at the end and was trying to fight it. So I tried to cast him as a hero in the story rather than just this disturbed kid who did something awful. And I know intellectually that that's the truth, that he did it, and that he wasn't that he was angry, and that he had some emotional break, and I accept that. But emotionally, I wanted to try and just kind of put some salve on that wound that I've had.
It's like an average Tuesday night in Florida.
He's not wrong.
It's kind of true though. But actually, one of the podcasts I did listen to was you doing Richard Ramirez, right? And that's very similar, swear to Satan and all that sort of stuff, as far as like the devil worshiping. So it's interesting.
Yeah, that's my new season. So it's the 4th season, and I've got about 100 like one-off like weekly episodes that I've done, similar content. But for the full like deep dive seasons, I like to have some kind of alleged satanic or demonic kind of connection to it, because that's what kind of launched the brand, I guess, the Devil Within brand. So like season 2 was a possession in the UK back in the 70s that went awful. Season 3 was about the son of Sam, the Dave Berkowitz in New York, because he thought his neighbor's dog was possessed by a demon, telling him to kill women. And then Ramirez, who was an avowed Satanist, making victims swear on Satan and stuff. Yeah, so it's been an interesting world to kind of splash around in these last few years.
I have a question for you then. Where do you fall with your belief system? Like, do you think that this is inherent mental illness, or do you think that there may be some external influences involved in some of these cases?
So that's a great question, and you're going to put me on the spot, but that's okay.
No softballs here.
I'm asked
buddy,
it a
sorry.
lot. I'm asked it a lot. So I was raised, like I said, in New Jersey, which is a reliably blue state, but my town was the raspberry in the bowl of blueberries, right? It's very conservative, very Catholic. My family was not one of those. I'm from a family of scientists. We're not believers at all. So I never had any kind of belief in any of that kind of stuff at all. Okay. Just to put that out there right now. What I do reluctantly admit in this case, that there are aspects of it that I can't explain. Now, I don't know if I'll go so far as to say that it's because he was possessed by the devil. I won't, but I will stop short, and I will stop and I will say, I guess anything's possible.
Fair. I mean,
right?
I'm glad I wore my bad religion shirt for this.
Terrific. But here's what's scary though, guys. I'll tell you something. Here's what's really scary. Like a legitimate scary way for me is talking to somebody who is a believer, okay, who is smart and well-read and educated, and you can have a wonderful in-depth conversation with. They also happen to hold beliefs that you don't hold. But I also recognize legitimate fear when I see it. And to hear people that I interviewed for the podcast talk about their legitimate fear of Satan is scary. It makes me a little bit think, am I missing something?
No, you're not.
I mean, that's Mark's an avowed atheist, and I'm not a believer myself.
So
I fully believe that everybody's entitled to their own belief system, and if you have that fear, then it's real for you, regardless of how I feel about it. You know what I mean?
So it's funny, like, because I love listening to like Catholic radio. There's Catholic radio just because I find it so interesting. Like, listening to people who do believe so much, and they're all talking about their guardian angel, and they really, really believe they have this guardian angel, and then they talk about Ouija boards are evil, and you can invite spirits in, and these people absolutely 100% believe in this sort of stuff, and it's interesting to me as somebody who doesn't believe in that, because I'm like, so I asked, like, in my head, kind of like the stupid questions, the very simple stupid questions, like, what sort of powers does the devil have over a person or a demon, right? And how does that play into personal responsibility? If I have some sort of supernatural demon or devil making me do something, well, it's not really my fault. At the end, it's not.
Right.
But on the flip side, you have the people that unfortunately, very famous, I don't remember her name, killed her kids, because she's like, it's absolutely logical, that she said if they grow up, they could go to hell forever. But if I kill them now, they'll go to heaven forever. And she knew that she was sacrificing her own soul in her head to do that, which is the ultimate, like, love, right? In this framework, in this kind of religious framework. So, as much as, people can believe whatever they want, I do think that, and it's now a religious podcast. I do think that beliefs drive actions. That can be good or bad. And if you're believing stuff for no good reason, then that can be problematic sometimes.
I don't know if believing for no good reason is the problem. I
Well,
think it's
what
when
I'm
you
saying
utilize
is
that belief
you've no evidence to believe something other than what somebody else has told you.
That's the definition
that
of
was
faith,
written
Mark.
in a book that was translated and blah blah blah.
But that's the definition of faith, right? And
Yeah, faith is
in
not
any
a
form. Faith in any
is
form
not
can
a
be a
good
beautiful.
thing. Faith
It
is
could be. It could be. It depends on how it's used.
religious faith is not a good thing.
I disagree.
Okay. Well, faith,
Because I've seen both sides, right? You see the people that
no.
take it to the negative extreme, and you see people that keep it positive.
No, hang on. So faith is believing in something without good reason, right? That's what faith is.
I don't know about good reason. I'd say without proof.
That's good reason, correct?
It depends on who you talk to.
Okay, so I have a magical elf in my backyard. Do you believe me? Do you have faith? Well,
Look,
that's
right now, can we see the elf? Can I see the elf?
Mark,
it's an invisible elf. Only I can see it.
But that was common belief, up in Scotland and Ireland. Like fairies and elves were a common belief. So why is that a problem?
Well, when you start, like, killing people because they believe in a different elf,
we're getting off track here, Mark.
We are. I'm sorry.
We are. This is going into our
please jump in because I'll just go on my rant.
But anyway, faith in either form can be both terrifying and beautiful, right? Depending on how it's applied. That's my opinion. But that's just me. I don't have it, so I'm a little envious sometimes. Because
like George Michael said, you have to have faith.
That's right.
You gotta have faith.
I'm not a proponent of faith for what it's worth, but I was asked the question a lot, especially after season 1 came out. I did a lot of interviews, and my answer was, as a parent, no, I don't think he was possessed by the devil. I think the truth is far more terrifying, that everybody who should have given a shit about this kid, parents, teachers, clergy, coaches, all of them missed what was obviously a massive mental and emotional breakdown that this kid had, because they couldn't see past the labels that they put on him. Athlete, altar boy, straight A student, like, oh, that's what they wanted him to see. They didn't see past it, and at obviously at their peril. But where it gets really interesting was the woman who was the principal of his school during this time. And again, this was 35, 36 years ago. She's still alive. Her name's Sister Philomena. Small woman. She's got white gray hair and these really piercing, bright, kind of blue eyes, and all of her wits about her. She's still sharp as a tack, and she remembers this like it was yesterday. And she tells the story where it was the last day before winter break. She had noticed only in the previous few days that something had changed in Tommy. And she said it was the last period before the bell and before the school was over. And she asks Tommy to stay. He ignores her. She goes, because in her mind now, and this is a person of faith saying, because I wasn't talking to Tommy. Tommy didn't exist within that human form anymore, right? Something had taken up residence or whatever. She wasn't using those words. I'm paraphrasing a nun, I'm sorry. But she said, if Tommy's in there, I need to tell him something. She goes, Tommy turned around. She said, wasn't looking at a 14-year-old boy. She was looking at just something different. And she said, I want Tommy to know that exorcism is still a Catholic rite. Okay? She goes, and then for just a second, the innocent, fearful face of a 14-year-old kid reemerged, looked at her and said, it's too late, sister. And he turned around and he left. And that was the last time anybody that was still alive ever saw. So hearing her tell that story, even though I don't believe it, I know that she believes it. Okay. And it makes me feel bad for her, right? It makes me, because she's carrying this guilt around that because I'm like, fucking tackle the kid. If you're so worried about it, tackle him, throw him in a room, get his parents, get the police, get whatever religious person you want to come talk to him. You don't just let him walk away.
And I could throw in, obviously, just off the top, as an altar boy, well, you know what happened to a lot of altar boys, especially 30 years ago?
Yes.
Yes.
Right in that wheelhouse, brother. I'm telling you. And that's something that we learned, was that it was hidden from our community, but that Catholic Church was a part of that larger class action suit. That church was actually named. So who knows what's going on?
Which could logically, again, if you do believe and then something happens to you like that, that makes logical sense to be like, well, fuck God, he didn't help me. I'm going with the devil.
I'm going to align with this faction. I'm going to go to the dark side. You know, who's the rebellious nature of youth, right? And the wild heart of the young. That's like, yeah, that's what I'm going to do, and fuck all that. And I'm going to listen to this music, and I'm going to have new friends, and I'm going to argue with teachers and with my coach, and I'm going to get in arguments with my mom and all this. And so what happened, and I'll tell you about the murder and the suicide briefly. He laid in wait for his mother to come from the laundry room to the living room with a basket of laundry. He had a 5-pound or a 10-pound dumbbell and just knocked her over the head. She's unconscious. He takes out his Boy Scout knife and stabs her like 60 times, carves up her face and gouges her eyes out and all the shit, like really up close and brutal. That it's snowing like hell outside. He tries to steal his dad's car. He puts all these satanic books in a circle in the living room floor and lights them on fire while his dad and his 8-year-old little brother are asleep. And he hops in his dad's car, doesn't know how to drive to begin with, let alone in the snow, crashes it 10 feet across from his own driveway into a snowbank. So now he's on foot and he runs off. Okay. So the fact that it was snowing was very important. So the first call went out that it was a murder and a kidnapping because they found her and then they couldn't find him. So they're like, okay. They didn't think that he was the culprit at first because it was awful. So all night, the town is on lockdown because they think that there's a murderer and a kidnapper on the loose. Next morning, they find him. He's 100 yards away. He's across the street. He'd positioned himself so he could see his house, right? Ostensibly, they thought he wanted to watch the house burn down so, he could fulfill his deal with the devil. And then they say he took the same Boy Scout knife, right? And he tried to cut his wrist. He stabbed himself in the left wrist, but the blade went in between the two bones of his arm and just kind of there, rendering the hand useless. Then, allegedly, he took the same 3-inch Boy Scout blade and buried it under his left ear and then just dragged it straight across to his right ear, cutting
Jesus.
all arteries, his larynx, his esophagus, his spine. It was like a 95% decapitation. Okay. First cop on the scene secures the scene. Second cop shows up. And this is all in the report. The first cop says, man, we're so lucky it was snowing tonight because no one otherwise would have believed that this was a suicide. There's only one set of footprints to the body. Okay. And he was right. Every coroner, medical examiner, doctor.
I don't know. I've seen The Shining, though.
right. Everybody said,
saying,
oh my God, who did this to this kid? Like, no one believed that it was suicide. Okay.
Mhm.
Because how he's 106 pounds, right? Doctors are like, you bleed out when you're halfway through. It's so painful. There were no drugs in his system. There was like nothing. Okay. But still, no forensic evidence, no other footprints, no nothing that there was anybody else there. So that's where everybody started, the secular community versus the Catholic community. Catholics were like, it was demonic possession. The devil gave them the power to do this. Cops were like, we got to find some other master criminal that was here that actually did this to this poor kid. Catholic Church was very powerful at the time, and the investigation was shut down. There was never a trial. The dad and the little brother moved to Florida. Dad got remarried 6 months later. The little brother committed suicide 10 years after that.
Wow.
And that's
So-
that.
So it's kind of interesting that he went so, viciously onto his mom, but she was really the only victim, right?
Other than him, right? Yeah.
Right, but you wonder, is there some Catholicism in that, as far as Mary, right? Or did she know something and he was angry at her, or she never helped him? Maybe he, but it's weird to go like so vicious on one family member specifically, and then because he could have waited for his dad. Like, obviously, it sounds like his dad was sleeping or something, right? And he set the house on fire. He could have easily went up there and just cut his throat while he was sleeping, right?
Could have killed his brother. His little brother walked in on him in the bathroom when he was washing the blood off his hands.
That's
So maybe the mom was doing something to him.
Yep.
Or maybe
Or he
not.
felt like
I don't like casting aspersions on.
No.
especially
Listen.
in-
Oh
but-
man, the aspersion train has really picked up because the show recently, and again, like me just falling into lucky break after lucky break here. The show got. I'm going to sound like a Hollywood douchebag, but it got picked up by a major streamer for a documentary series. I can't say who it is because they want to control the thing. And so they're doing everyone's re-interviewing people for all of this. Okay. And there's this private investigator working on it who, I'm not saying he's convinced, but the way that he operates is he decides on an outcome and then tries to disprove it. It's very scientific. Okay. And so what he's trying to disprove was that the father was involved because he thinks the father was involved. Okay. Because if the father's still alive and the father has a couple of really disturbing kind of hits on his record in the years since, right? Like some peeping Tom stuff, some child pornography stuff, like who knows?
wow.
And so this guy's theory is that if he was doing this stuff in Florida and in Ohio, right? Maybe he was doing it in Jersey and his wife found out about it and he needed to shut her up. Okay. And then the kid walked in and so he had to kill him and then did some miraculous kind of staging in the woods where no one could figure it out, right? So when it comes to either, a credible, I guess, terrestrial explanation rather than something paranormal, right? Like that's where I would focus. But again, no evidence, and it was back in the 80s.
It's hard to say, and whenever you look at like a lot of internet sleuths, right? They can fuck up people's lives because they come up with some also, hey, I just think this, and now people think that of them because they're well. It's almost like, did you watch that documentary about the what's the hotel in Las Vegas where the woman drowned in the
that was
water?
in LA. That was the Cecil
LA, yeah,
Hotel.
The Cecil one. And like I watched that document and I kind of knew about it beforehand, but I'm like, this documentary is like really just trying to like pull the audience along with like and even though that they knew what happened, right, that she was just mentally gone, they
Yeah.
really played up all these conspiracy theories around it. I'm just and at the end I'm like, I feel like you're just like trying to make it more than what it was, right? And trying to make it, and it's entertainment, I guess, as far as
Sure.
so somebody dying. But I'm like, it's almost fraudulent the way you made it because you explain it very simply at the end, but you always knew that because it was a prior case. So I think there's a line to be drawn. I don't know where it is. It's not my
Yeah, I
job.
don't either. I jump over that line all the time, right? Like that's kind of my bread and butter
And
with this. Yeah.
well, I mean, I think whenever you're coming up with a Jersey Devil or like some
Yeah.
sort of paranormal thing, I
Right.
think that's more understandable as far as entertainment goes. But I think some of them they start to point at various people that could have done something, but there's no evidence, and they start saying, "Well, maybe it's him, maybe it's Sam," and
Yeah.
social media and everything else nowadays.
I'm not gonna lie. It does sort of make sense though with the Satanic Panic in the '80s that an adult was involved and just used that as an excuse. That's I would consider that a valid theory.
Yes, exactly. Because at this point, we were still in the grips of the Satanic Panic,
Yep.
but a lot of the bullshit about it was starting to be exposed, right?
Right.
That a lot of it was overblown. A lot of it was believing the testimony of a coached 5-year-old, right? I
Right.
mean, come on, that, and people were going to jail behind that shit, right?
They were.
So that was starting to get exposed a little bit, and so I agree with you that if someone wanted to commit like kind of the perfect crime under the guise of the Satanic Panic, sure, if there weren't also a lot of evidence about Tommy's newfound fascination with that, which
Right.
also exists, and
Yep.
and they can back it up 6 weeks to the Thanksgiving break assignment where everyone had to, it was called Religions of the World, where everyone in his class had to do an essay on a different world religion. And Tommy got Mormonism, but his wrestling buddy got Satanism. And so we know that happened. We know that that's where Tommy was first introduced to that whole world. That's where he got his copy of the Satanic Bible. But then other investigators backed it up even more, saying, well, that's not where he was introduced. And people are like, what do you mean? Where was he introduced to Satanism? They're like, hey, dipshit, at fucking church every Sunday. Okay?
Right, because the Church of Satan typically, well, certainly now,
Yeah,
it is really just, hey, we're just doing this to show
of
we don't
course.
really believe in Satan, right? We're
Right.
just using this as a mirror to hold up the society to say, if you're going to allow one religion in a school, well, one
Allow them all.
right?
Yep.
Right. But think about these kids. And again, I never went to church, but I grew up with a bunch of kids that did. And they were kind of laughing about it in a way when their parent, there were these town hall meetings, 2 town hall meetings, because parents were rightfully just terrified. Wait a minute, our teenagers can murder us in our homes? This isn't cool. We got to talk about it. And they're demanding from the church elders, like, how could a boy be how could he know? How could he be taught anything about something so evil? And the other kids are like, we hear about it like every Sunday. We hear about how awesome Jesus is and about how powerful Satan is, and it's this war and cavalry and all this kind of stuff. And so where do you think we hear it? We
Yeah.
hear that they think, oh,
I'm sorry, if you think about it, in the Bible, I think Satan kills like 3 people, and God kills millions,
Right.
million, million.
including babies, unborn
Absolutely. And he
babies.
tells people, kill them all.
Yeah,
Yep.
genocide, and then enslave them. Keep the women, just kill the boy. Whatever.
Keep the young women for yourselves. Wink, wink. Okay,
Yeah.
you know why. Low five, right? But I
Yeah.
mean, come on. It's so the parents shouldn't be shocked that their kids are exposed to the ultimate evil right alongside the ultimate good, and the hope is that they'll side with the ultimate good as a hedge against a fear of eternal damnation and suffering, an eternity of conscious torment and fire. Okay, like
And,
okay,
and,
I'll hang out with the good guys,
and
but
none
every
of
now
that
and
makes
then,
any sense. None of that
no,
makes any sense anyway. Why would the devil put people in hell? Because that's what God would want.
I
Anyway,
listen.
we're not going to get it. So I watched a documentary about the Satanic Panic and where it came from.
Mm,
And I guess it was like a woman in Australia. I don't know if you've seen this documentary. And she said, that she was part of a cult and they were killing babies and stuff. And this very famous psychiatrist.
no,
Uh,
no, I think she was Canadian. Michelle
was it,
Remember
was,
was the
was
book
it
called
Canadian or
Michelle.
Australian? I thought she was Australian. And then
Man,
they did like
I
this
could be
big book
wrong too.
tour and everything.
It was
Well,
yeah, it was a book. If you can, and she wound up marrying her
yeah,
shrink.
yeah,
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 okay. So it's a book called Michelle Remembers, where she said
right.
she had passed, she had repressed memories
Hmm.
that this guy was able to yank out of her. That from the time she was like 5, her family was in like this ancient,
Yeah,
multi-generational satanic cult. Right? Yeah. And then
yeah.
everyone went, "Me too." Whoa, weird.
But
Yeah, yeah.
it got carried away, right? Because it wasn't just about Satanism either, because then we started getting all of these celebrities and everybody saying how they had repressed memories of being molested when they were kids. It sort of just snowballed.
Yeah.
And
It
it
snowballed
became insanity.
into the absurd. It became theater of the absurd.
Yeah.
There were reports that there were 50,000 human sacrifices per year in the U.S. in satanic cults that eclipsed the known murder rate of 36,000 ish. Okay, so
Right.
everyone's like, well, where are all these bodies? Where are all the families saying, yo, this person's missing? And we're like, oh, don't worry about it.
Right.
That's what's happening. That's what's going on. So that got it got really kind of
And
blown out of proportion.
and that's why I believe critical thinking, logic, and evidence evaluation should be absolutely mandatory in schools,
Of course,
alongside English
I
and
don't
math
disagree.
and everything else.
well, I mean, in any
Especially,
other,
especially in the internet age. Sorry.
yeah, but in every other kind of area of our lives, we demand a little bit more evidence before we do something.
Yes.
Right? But then in other areas, we're just going to believe it. Like, okay, yeah, I guess there are these satanic cults everywhere.
I would challenge that in today's
Oh,
world.
yeah, okay, I hear you. Yeah,
Alternative facts, right? I mean, this post-truth, like
yeah, 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 yeah. I know.
fucking,
No, hey, it's unfortunate that that's
and
where we're. Yeah,
and like they say, a lie can spread around the world quicker than a truth can go wherever.
yeah,
I mean, that's even more now with the internet and people kind of wanting to, people want to believe in conspiracy theories because it makes them feel special, right?
yeah.
That they have some sort of special information that the rest of us don't. And 300 million people just in the US, and what amount?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Especially if that conspiracy theory buttresses something that you either believe is true or that you hope is true.
Mhm.
Then, of course, you're gonna
And,
have.
and, and people generally buy into the conspiracy theories that already, as you say, they already have some sort of belief system prior
Yeah,
to it, and they're like, "Oh, now this makes sense to me." Without,
yeah, yeah. Interesting thing because I did a whole series on the Satanic Panic. I was just gonna do like one episode, and it turned into like 7 or 8. Like kind of it was an unofficial mid-season kind of series.
Mhm.
Um, that because I just man I love doing the research because these little gems just kind of pop out that in my busy life or whatever or in my myopic kind of research I wouldn't think about and one of the things that I read on a paper a long essay that made a connection directly a link straight line from the beliefs and the structure of the satanic panic, okay, became the QAnon movement,
Mhm.
right? The same buttons and levers were pulled in terms of conspiracy theories and what makes it more easily believable to a certain group of people. And then you have the early adopters that then amplify it through their platforms. And now all of a sudden it's like the same blueprint.
People want like a simple answer to complex questions, right? this is where like scapegoating comes from. You know,
Sure.
satanic panic. Oh, it's heavy metal that's making people go
Absolutely.
crazy. It's video games. It's this. They just want one thing that they can focus on,
Yeah.
rather than saying, well, you know, parenting is very complex and society is tough on a lot of people, and there's mental health issues in general, and because that's a large thing to tackle. But people want a simple, hey, people are shooting people because of
Well,
Call of Duty.
they gave it they gave it a name though, right? It was alternative facts.
They sure did.
Well,
I mean, they gave it a
so,
name. You now just have to say, oh, well, that sure if you believe those facts, but here are my alternative
so yes,
facts, and there's no
It's going to be on Kelly
there's no
Conway's
accountability.
tombstone.
yeah.
Alternative.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Not to get political, but
Yeah.
it's
so,
the truth
so
with the
Jim,
QAnon
yes,
movement. They just make up shit to fit their narrative rather than listen to objective fact.
well, again, I think it's that simplistic nature of a lot of people just want simple answers, whether those answers are correct or not. They just want something simple to point to so that they can sleep easier, right?
Yeah.
Oh, it's video
Yep.
games. Okay, well, I can't do anything about that, but I know it's that. So we won't have little Jimmy play Call of Duty, right? And they think that that's the answer. Um,
I never played Call of Duty.
well, I'm just saying, like, video games or whatever.
I know, Mark. I'm just
Heavy
kidding.
metal
But-
used to be, hippies, drugs,
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
that, the other.
Yeah.
Before
it's
that,
just-
it was the communists in the 50s, and
oh
before
yeah,
that,
Red Scare, yeah.
There's always a red herring.
for a lot of people, it's
Always.
always the Jews. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's always right, and or it's people who are a different color than you. There's always like the brown menace and the caravans coming up to take your job. I mean, there's always something to keep people
Yeah.
scared.
And that's been from the dawn of time, right? I mean,
Yeah, of course, absolutely.
you
But
know,
there's a little bit of hope that
Is there?
with
Okay.
regard
I'm glad I'm sitting down because I need some hope right now.
with regard to demonic possession in that world. Okay, and I don't know why it's not advertised more, but I forget, maybe the Second Vatican Council, when Pope John Paul was still running shit, and it was in like 1990 or 91, where they actually amended it's still there. You can still exorcism is still listed in Catholic rites, okay, but they added a whole paragraph that makes it mandatory for the presiding cardinal over the archdiocese, because you have to ask permission before you can perform an exorcism. Right. Okay, that the cardinal is tasked with making sure that all mental health boxes are checked beforehand. That you have to go see tons of psychiatrists and have tons of mental evaluations and get brain scans to make sure there's no tumor, and to get brain scans to make sure there's no this or there's nothing physical going on. Then you have to have evaluations with and try medical or over-the-counter drugs or prescription drugs or all of this stuff to try and find a scientific remedy to what's going on before they can an exorcism. I think that's a little bit of progress.
It is. You're right.
Religion has been dragged kicking and screaming into today's world where we have more knowledge than we've ever had.
I agree.
The Catholic Church, especially, I think they said, well, evolution. Did they say evolution was fact or something? It was something weird like that. I'm like, does that undermine your whole religion? But
yeah, sure.
Well, they apologize to Galileo and stuff for like fucking torturing and.
But you have to understand, Mark. I promise you that if you read the whole quote, where if a religion, anyone in power, when they admit that something is factual, like evolution, somewhere in that quote will be, and that just proves how clever God is, because that was part of his plan to hide in his creation.
They're called like unsinkable rubber ducks, right? So whatever you come up with that proves them wrong, they'll bob under and then they'll come back up and say, "Oh, actually,
that's how clever God is."
And they used to think heaven was above us, right? And then we figured out space and blah blah blah. Anyway, we're not going to get
No, I read something so funny that God's so clever that he hid the dinosaur fossils to test our
No,
faith.
but yeah, yes,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah,
Jim, do
absolutely.
you have faith in that?
No.
Oh, you
Mark.
believe humans and dinosaurs live together? That's why you go to that. That's why you
Yeah,
go to that
I mean,
park encounter.
haven't you seen the Flintstones?
No,
Flintstones, proof,
That's
proof,
fact.
it
Flintstones.
is fine.
Yeah, the Flintstones proof,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, they all got on the ark.
That's
Yeah,
right.
it was a very,
What?
very big ark.
It was a very big arc, 40 cubits,
40
right?
cubits. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
But so anyway, yeah, guys, so that's kind of the world that I kind of inhabit, and I infuse a lot of my episodes with a healthy dose of skepticism and snark sometimes. And the only major I get a few comments here and there like, hey, tone it down, but whatever. But where I got attacked and threatened and challenged was when I did an episode on Bigfoot. Don't fuck with the Bigfoot. Don't
Really?
fuck with the Bigfoot community. I'm telling you. I had a guy say offered to finance my trip to the Pacific Northwest to spend a week in the woods with him, and he would prove it to me. I went, yeah, sure, dude.
That sounds like a great.
You should.
No,
I would have
hang
taken
on.
him up on it.
I'm going to write a horror documentary about you going out with this guy to find Bigfoot.
It'll be a mix of Creep and Tahoe Joe.
And it will be terrifying. Forget about the Blair Witch.
Yes.
This is going to be.
That's what I had visions of Blair Witch going on. I had a little deliverance nightmare that happened. I was like, come on, man. You think I'm going to go in the woods with you for a week? What are you talking about?
Although you could do the swerve, right? Where you're skeptical and you go up with him and you actually find Bigfoot.
That's what was kind of proven to me. I'm like, you think I will see a Bigfoot? He goes, maybe not, but you'll know that Bigfoot is real because I'll show you Bigfoot signs. You'll hear Bigfoot at night.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, what are Bigfoot signs? Tufts of hair, 8 feet up. Okay, that only a Bigfoot can do. Footprints, that kind of stuff. Well, I'm gonna have to.
That's because bears
I'm
don't
gonna
exist.
pass on that offer, but
I've got a favor to ask, Branden.
yeah.
Can you put that guy in touch with Jim so that
I'd go. I would be dead in a heartbeat because I would be in the Pacific Northwest looking for Bigfoot.
That's the plan.
All right, hold on.
I know. I figured, Mark.
All seriousness, Jim. You would like. Listen, if you vetted the guy and he doesn't have a record, and you actually didn't feel in fear of your life, would you take like a one-on-one tour into the wilds of the Pacific Northwest, like Rambo, Pacific 100%.
Hell no.
Yep.
I hate
I
camping.
would.
I like my creature country.
I love being out in the woods.
Cool.
I've always wanted to visit the Pacific
Well,
Northwest.
remember the cops came and told you to stop doing that, Jim?
Yeah, but that's Florida. They're different up there.
Very different. Very different.
Yeah.
They won't know who you are.
That's right, exactly. I have no record in the Pacific Northwest. So anyway, Branden, how do you feel? Do you think that you being a skeptic makes you better at doing the research part for your podcasts, or do you think it sort of negatively informs your opinion?
What?
Gosh, these questions, dude. Fuck. No, it's
Sorry.
okay because I think I go into it because listen, I believe, not believe. I don't believe. No one believes in science. I've been exposed to science and the scientific method. Okay, so things have to be falsifiable.
Yeah.
So I come up with a theory or a hypothesis that I read about. I'm like, oh, let's get into some research and see what evidence there is and see if it holds up. Okay, and
Sure.
I would say most of the time that opens the door to some humor. Okay, because I find
Yes,
the
of course.
evidence wanting like most of the time. But I also have a great deal of respect for our stories, for folklore. I'm a big fan of Joseph Campbell and mythology, and that there are a lot of lessons to learn from it. So I still think
Yeah, of
that
course.
there is a lot of value in these stories, a ton of value in these stories.
Yeah.
And so, despite the lack of real empirical evidence, I still feel because of that mythological folklore, Joseph Campbellian kind of value that these stories hold, that I can tell them in good conscience, and that I can infuse a little bit of my own snark and a little bit of my skepticism,
Mm-hmm.
and tell stories. But then you run into, like, during the French Olympics, the Paris Olympics this past summer. I went, oh, okay, I'm going to take a US break, and I'll do 2 weeks of European episodes. And they have some crazy stories. Crazy stories.
They
Okay.
do.
But there was one about this dude, present day, who thinks he's a fucking vampire. And he spends his days in underground mausoleums in Paris. And he went to jail for desecrating a corpse because he would eat them and bite them. And I'm not kink shaming at all, but he goes into these sex clubs where girls let you bite them and draw blood, and he drinks their blood, and he did time behind this stuff. And now, but he's out, and he's a musician, and he still calls himself a vampire. He had his teeth filed down, and so that stuff, I find that interesting. I find, I could read a Stephen King book about vampires and love it.
But is he like more of an attention seeker, do you think?
I listen, if you're attention seeking and then you go to jail for a couple years, I think you're like, maybe you got a little too much attention in jail, right? Maybe you'd stop doing that stuff, but he's still doing it. He's still doing it within the law, but I guarantee you he's doing some shit outside of the law also because of his past. So I find that stuff super interesting. A lot of my episodes are also about serial killers because that I enjoy that psychology and kind of figuring it out. And but so there are with regard to, does my skepticism inform my storytelling? 100% it does. There are some weeks where I want to be a little bit more on the ball in terms of facts. There are other weeks where I just feel like telling a good story, and I think my audience appreciates that, and and my advertisers appreciate it also. And I say all the time, I'm not bound by any journalistic kind of ethical kind of framework. That's just not. I don't claim to be. I'm more of a storyteller, and that happens to splash around in a world where sometimes people want me to be a journalist, and I'm sorry, I'm not.
Well, I mean, but that sort of takes us into the realm of movies in general based on true events, right? They're never 100% based on a true event. There's always some embellishment.
Mostly it's like 1% of the true events.
Exactly. There's a kernel of truth that they build.
Yeah. Something got killed somewhere, so we're going to say this is based on a true event.
Right.
Or Mark and I were talking about this the other week, is people have been, like with Fire in the Sky or the Amityville Horror, where everybody was convinced it actually happened, and then the people that perpetrated the hoax come out and say it's all bullshit.
Yeah. Let me take over your show for a second. Okay, Jim, I'll ask you first.
Sure.
Please give me your top 5 horror movies.
My top 5, just in general?
Yes.
Okay. So The Exorcist, Nightmare on Elm Street. I will have to go with Motel Hell, which I just rewatched yesterday. Mm-hmm. Still fantastic. Critters is another favorite.
Wow.
And then The Ghoulies. I absolutely love The Ghoulies.
Wow. All right. Child of the 80s. All right, Mark, go.
Okay. Martyrs, the original French version. I think is the best horror movie ever made. Jaws. Let's see, The Thing.
Ooh.
I don't know. There's like I want to go like foreign horror movie, but
Mark is a huge fan of Cat 6 movies.
I am a kid of the 80s, so it's like I just want to do like John Carpenter stuff.
Yeah.
Like all the time. God. Like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I think that's an amazing genre changing or defining movie. And I'll go with Cannibal Holocaust because I think again that's another genre defining, massively influential horror movie.
Now, one of your picks there, I need a follow up. Am I allowed a follow up question? Okay. Yep. Much like the debate, is a hot dog a sandwich? Okay. I say Jaws as my number 1 all the time, and sometimes I get a bunch of shit. Like, Jaws isn't technically a horror movie. It's a scary movie, but is it a horror movie?
It's a
I
creature
think it
feature.
is.
So Jaws used to be like, whenever people ask me this question, Jaws was always my number one, right?
Mhm.
Because it does what a horror movie should do and scare the shit out of you. Like I never wanted to go in the ocean after it, and there's very few movies that make you actually change your day-to-day life or have thoughts about it.
Couldn't agree more.
But I changed it to Martyrs because I think Martyrs is more of, it's simply a horror movie.
Correct.
And there's no ambiguity. So, and whenever you talk about top 5, top 10, top 20, I mean, there's so many great movies out there. But Jaws used to be, but after
So
thinking about it and being,
I have always considered Jaws to be a creature feature, right? It's a when animals attack movie. The animal's not doing anything but being a shark, right?
That's the counter argument. It's a very strong counter argument.
right, but so yeah, and this is where you get to like delineations of genre.
Yes.
A creature feature could necessarily be a horror movie, so I don't see.
It could. You're right. But in my opinion, I love Jaws. Don't get me wrong. I will watch it a million times, and I probably have. But it's just a shark being a shark. There's no method behind it. He's just doing what sharks do, and he's eating. You could
He does a little bit more, Jim, than a normal shark would. A normal shark wouldn't jump onto a boat to get somebody. I'm like,
I mean, if your waters are being overfished, why is that unexpected behavior? They breach all the time in South Africa.
Now you're putting something else that's not in the movie.
But I'm not.
So in the movie, they say the waters are being overfished.
Behavior. What?
In the movie, they say the waters are being overfished.
I didn't say that. I'm just saying that there are natural occurrences that could drive that behavior.
So what about Jaws of Revenge, Jim?
That's
okay. That's different.
That is a cinematic abortion.
Agreed. But is a hot dog a sandwich?
I don't like hot dogs enough to care, to be honest.
I would say not.
I heard something pretty,
because the bun is still joined.
I heard something pretty radical yesterday.
A sandwich, you have to, the bread needs to be separated.
If I break the bun in half, it becomes a sandwich?
Yes.
I heard something pretty radical yesterday, and I'd like your opinion, if you don't mind, since we're on this hot dog and sandwich conversation. You ready?
Yeah.
So you have a hot dog, and there's always some sort of topping, whether it's just a condiment or relish or whatever. Does that make a hot dog a taco?
Oh my gosh.
Well, here's another question. Why are they called stairs inside and steps outside?
Nobody cares, Mark. We're talking about hot dogs and tacos.
Moving on.
But anyway, so I was going to go.
Welcome to our nightmare.
I was going to go back to the creature feature conversation.
Hang on, Brandon. So what are your top 5 horror movies?
My top 5. Okay, I'm a little bit all over the place. Jaws, I put at the top. I'm firmly in the camp that Jaws is a horror movie.
Sure.
I understand other arguments, and I'm also I'm a Gen X kid. The first Friday the 13th terrified me.
Mm-hmm.
The last scene coming up out of the water forget about it. That bothered me. Amityville Horror scared me because I thought it was true.
Yep.
Because my mom had read the book, and I remember her just being completely terrified reading the book. And
I loved the book.
I think Amityville 2 is the best in the series.
That's just because you like the incest storyline.
Well,
that was weird, right?
It was. It was so weird.
I'm talking about somebody, being possessed by the devil and stuff. You got all that in there.
Yeah,
that's fair. We got 2 more.
And then Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yep.
Totally does it again because just high school kids and the fists coming up. I mean, the coming up through Johnny Depp's chest. That was fucking crazy. And number 5, man, I go back and forth. Right. I'm friends with the great horror director Eli Roth. And,
nice.
Yes. And so it's impossible to sit down with him and not just get an encyclopedic knowledge of all things horror. Okay.
I have a question about one of his films, but that's okay.
And so I think I was really influenced in a negative, in a scary way. So I guess a positive way by movies like The Ring, like when that came out.
Hmm.
Like
That was a great
I
film.
found that interesting, like or like the first Jigsaw. That was being forced into a decision where that the movie forces you to go to. Like, what would you do
Yeah.
if. So those kind of I kind of float between 4 or 5 '90s, 2000s, aughts kind of movies. Yeah,
Have you seen Martyrs? Because
I have. I've heard you mention it now here.
yeah, yeah. You need to watch the original French version. It's like
Yes.
2008.
Okay.
Don't look up anything about it.
Yeah.
Just
Go in
just
totally blind.
watch it.
It's an experience you have to see.
Okay. And I have another question.
Sure.
Has M. Night Shyamalan made any horror movies?
Yes.
Okay, which ones of his would you consider to be horror?
The Visit.
Ooh, okay. So what would
That is a
something?
true. That have you seen it?
Yeah. Oh,
That's a
absolutely.
truly horrifying experience for two children to go through.
Well, no, that little kid rapping was horrific.
So his other movies then would be thrillers.
For the most part, yes.
Oh, no,
Or
I
suspense.
think I think The Sixth Sense is a
Suspense.
legitimate. Huh?
It's suspense. It's not horror.
No, I think. Well, I'm talking about my.
Yeah,
it is. Sure.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much. I think that's legitimately a horror movie.
That's fair. I disagree, but that's fair.
Okay. Cool. Good.
So,
What was
Branden,
your Eli Roth question?
yeah. So I have an issue with I loved the first Hostel movie, but I have a problem with it. Right?
Yeah.
There is
Oh,
some
for
subtext.
fuck's
I know
sake.
Mark hates this conversation, but
Oh, Jesus
Mark,
Christ.
there
your
is some
unhappiness is
subtext
palpable,
that is just
Mark.
randomly thrown into the film that I don't understand, and I would love to understand it.
Okay.
Where the two guys that are traveling bring some girls back to their room,
Mhm.
but the one guy can't take his eyes off his friend. Like, I don't understand why that's even thrown in there, because it doesn't have any purpose in the film.
So just to let you know, Brandon. So Jim might dislike a movie because of a character name that he doesn't like,
That is true. I refuse to
because
watch.
of the color of someone's hair. So
I
just to put that in perspective.
I refused to watch Happy Death Day for 3 years because the main character's name was Tree.
Oh. Okay.
I did. That is a valid statement by Mark.
Okay.
I was ecstatic when they killed off Clear Rivers in Final Destination because I hated her name.
Oh wow.
It made me so happy when she blew up next to the.
Well,
the
I'll
grid.
ask Eli that. I'm seeing him next week. I will ask him if
I'm extremely curious. Like, it's not a judgment. It's just that why is it there? Like, it
Well,
doesn't.
here's the thing. I'm sure you've heard this before. In filmmaking, there's the movie you write, the movie you shoot, and then the movie you end up with.
Right.
Okay. So there's a chance that there was some storyline
Right.
that led to that in the script that they thought that they shot it.
Yeah.
And that just didn't that didn't pan out in the edit. So
That's
maybe
completely
find
valid,
out.
right? That's
Yeah.
completely valid. I just want to know.
Okay, cool. That's a valid question. Why not?
I just did. But I will say the first Hostel movie I thought was okay. The second Hostel I thought was much better.
And if Eli wants to jump onto our podcast, I know we're the number
I'll
one
ask.
ranked
I'll let you
That
know.
would be amazing.
podcast
Yeah.
in the world. So I mean,
I
he's probably watching this right now.
Probably.
I think Eli's best work is the propaganda film that is shown during Inglourious Bastards.
Never seen it.
You didn't see the Tarantino movie, Inglourious Bastards?
I did not. Not a Tarantino fan.
So hang on. So Jim hates Quentin Tarantino, but he's never really seen any of his movies.
Yeah.
Well, all right. So real quick, Inglourious Bastards. It's a World War II film. It's about Tarantino's alternate. It's a fairy tale. It's an alternate ending to World War II that ends because movies are awesome. Okay,
Right.
And the whole Nazi high command is in a theater in Paris, and they're watching a propaganda movie about this Nazi war hero. and it's all shot in black and white. And Eli Roth plays a character in the movie, plays the Bear Jew in the movie, but you also see several scenes from the movie that they're watching in the theater. So they had to go make this movie, and Tarantino had Eli direct this really cool World War II propaganda film.
You know what? I almost think the piece of media that Roth made that I almost like the most. I love the Hostel movies, but like the Thanksgiving trailer that he made, it's that's the French kiss to the exploitation trailers. And even though I like the Thanksgiving movie, I prefer the trailer to the movie.
I absolutely love that movie. It was so much damn fun.
I first met him 20-something years ago. I auditioned for Cabin Fever. That's how we met.
Okay.
I didn't get the role, but we stayed friends. He's from Boston. I have friends from Boston, from Jersey. We kind of grew up in the same place. And knowing him, he's a really sweet, super generous guy. I mean, he's just a menschy dude. And I think that, for me, I think he's at his best when he's kind of tapping that kind of vein creatively. Like House with the Clock in Its Walls.
Great film.
Great film. I think he's at his best there. Well, listen, he's a Splat Pack kind of devotee. He was a member of I love his horror stuff. I think that's his passion.
That's evident in a lot of his work, and even in his interviews when you see, like, he did the history of
history of horror.
Which it's fantastic. You can tell he really cares about it. I will say I did not like Cabin Fever, but the soundtrack, just the mixing and the blah, like the sounds of the skin sloughing off, it's disgusting, and I loved every minute of it.
So Cabin Fever is such a weird movie, right? It's really weird tonally. Just even execution, it's such a strange movie. It didn't 100% click with me, but I thought the parts that worked really well. I think for Roth, for a lot of his stuff, I feel a little underwhelmed, honestly. And that's really because you talk about people like Rob Zombie and whatever, and the Soska sisters, and people who are really love the genre. And I kind of feel like if I don't connect with their movies, like it's almost like, again, this is a subjective thing, but it's almost like, oh, I wish you would play your cards a bit better because you are such a fan. Movies are subjective. So.
Absolutely.
Cannot stand Rob Zombie. House of a Thousand Corpses was a beautiful film. Everything else has been gutter trash. All of his movies, I don't care what it is. I don't like any of the Halloweens. And most of it has to do with the fact that his wife is in everything, and she drives me nuts.
Well, look, there you go. That's what movies are subjective. Art.
It is 100%, and I totally get that's my thing, right?
Branden, I hope you're not a friend of Jennifer Carpenter.
Oh God, sorry.
Not a friend. I don't know her. She was in Dexter, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
I have some very strong feelings about her performances.
Okay. I think I just saw her in something. Hold on. Wait a minute. It's coming. 1923. You guys watching the Taylor Sheridan Yellowstone spinoff? No? Okay.
My mother does, and I have not seen it.
It won't matter to you, but I think
now Jim definitely won't see it.
Yeah,
I mean, one episode playing a sheriff, something like that.
All she does is scream and say "fuck." That's all she does.
Jim, how many movies have you seen her in?
Well, mostly it was Dexter.
No, okay. So what else? What else?
I tried to watch.
She did a possession movie, didn't she?
Yeah, the Exorcism of Emily Rose. I've not seen it.
There you go.
So Jim's seen.
And then I also bought. Hey, in my defense, I bought Quarantine.
Yeah, but you didn't
give it a shot. I got 5 minutes into it, and I can't handle it.
So it's like, oh, you know what? That Robert De Niro guy, I hate the way he played Travis Bickle.
Only George Patton.
So he's a terrible actor. I'll never watch any of his stuff ever again.
Only George
Missing
C.
the
Scott,
forest
Mark.
for the trees, right?
But that's like Mark. That Mark loves George C. Scott. I can't stand him. I think he's a terrible one-note actor. But Mark loves him because he won an Academy Award. But he won an Academy Award
I love his
for playing General
performance.
Patton.
He turned down the Academy Award.
Yep,
he did. You're right.
Yeah.
No, Jim, don't speak for me. I
Okay.
love George C. Scott because he's a great actor. Whether he
not.
won an award or not, I don't care. I don't go by awards.
I loved him in Taps.
I've not seen Taps.
Oh, and then we can bring it back to serial killers, right? Because he was in Exorcist 3, and that was the favorite movie of Jeffrey Dahmer.
But that is his one note. He can play a cop. He can play a military person to a T. Anything else, he's awful. The Changeling was a terrible film.
Wow. Was that Angelina Jolie movie?
No.
The original
it's a 1980 ghost movie.
Oh, gotcha.
And he was fantastic.
Mm-mm.
Fantastic.
He's on the phone watching his family get killed and goes, "No!" Like, it's stupid.
Whereas Jim would go, ha 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 ha.
Pretty much.
Jim, hey Jim, I'm going to start a GoFundMe for you to go up to the Bigfoot hunting place.
That's okay. I will go. I will be fodder. No problem.
Oh, please live stream it.
That would be great. And
Branden, what do you have coming up?
So, the fourth season of The Devil Within is in wide release right now, wherever you get your podcasts. The television version of season 1, I can't say, but if you follow the show, I'm going to be doing announcements on the RSS feed there. That comes out this autumn, sometime around Halloween is what we're thinking. Nice. And then beyond that, just back to the weekly grind of my weekly content on the podcast. We're going to do a handful of bonus episodes about Ramirez because the series proper ends with his arrest, and there's actually a ton of interesting stuff that happened during the trial, and there are new audio recordings of his interviews that have been released. So I'll kind of milk that as much as I can with some bonus episodes, and then back to the weeklies.
Are there any cases that you're hoping to cover that you haven't talked about yet on your podcast?
There are a lot, and I'm not sure how. The curation is always the thing. Like, is it interesting enough? Is there enough meat on the bone? Does it check kind of like the satanic possession kind of box? Is that
I got one for you.
Okay, great.
Look up William Crutchley.
Could you spell the last name?
Crutchley.
Gotcha. Crutchley.
They called him the vampire rapist. He lived in Palm Bay, Florida.
William Crutchley.
Yep, I got to see his parole revocation hearing. Actually, you know what? It might go by John William. Hang on. Let me get the name right.
Gotcha. And he's called the vampire rapist?
Yep.
Holy fuck. Okay.
So essentially, and this happened right down the street. Oh, I'm sorry. It's John Branden Crutchley. I don't know why I always want to call him William. So it's John Crutchley. So he actually, his house was right down the street from where I live. And I only know about one of his victims, but it's assumed there were more. He had a woman tied up in his basement, and he would drain her of blood and drink it. And she was so weak she couldn't move, but she finally did recover enough to break out of his house. And I was lucky enough to go see his parole revocation hearing. It's quite a story.
All right, I will definitely look into that.
And Jim definitely did not frame him and did the crimes himself. Just an FYI.
Yeah, how long ago?
I think that was 90. It was either 90 or 94. Let's see.
That would be great. That's good to know.
Yeah, and it looks like he passed away in 2002. No, I lied. It was 85. It was 85, and I saw his parole revocation in 95.
Gotcha. All right, hey gentlemen, I have a dinner date, so I gotta
sure.
We gotta wrap this up if that's okay.
Yeah, so thank you
priorities.
for joining us. Yeah, right. So thank you for joining us, Branden. This has been great. I
Yes.
hope
Tons of
as you
fun,
have some
guys.
free time, you absolutely want to come back because we would love to talk to you again.
Same, and I do guest spots, every 2 or 3 months on my show. I'd love to find an interesting topic, talk to you guys about, and get you on.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime.
All right,
You have the
great.
email
So
address. We'll set it up.
yes, definitely. Let's stay in touch,
Yeah,
Yep.
that'll be great. I
guys.
appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk to your audience. I really, really appreciate it. I know what that's worth in this game. So thank you.
Anytime. I appreciate you coming on. This has been great.
Our millions of listeners will follow you now. No, we really appreciate it, and definitely come back on. And if we can come on your
Beautiful. Let's make it happen, guys. Thank you so much.
Awesome, Branden.
All
Thank you
right.
so much.
Thanks,
This has been great.
Take care.
Bye.